Hey guys, how's it going? So I just filmed a video a while back about my Petzl harness quiver, which is kind of my 90% harness setup. And I thought that, I might as well throw in the other harnesses that I have and that I may use, just kind of like to have a full quiver video out there. And then also I can talk about some times when I would use these harnesses for other things and where they could come into play. They branch into other brands, not just Petzl stuff, so you can hear my thoughts on other harnesses that I like a lot. Maybe this will help inform some decisions based on what you want to do with your climbing. Personally, I care more about the features of the harness than the weight, unless the weight is something that plays into it. For example, I have like a harness that I care about a lot of the features, like 4 gear loops and 2 ice clipper slots. But since I'm planning to use it on a big alpine or a long trip where I have to walk a lot, then I would care about the weight. But if it's a harness that I use for more rock guiding, where I'm going to be sitting in it a whole lot, especially at the anchors where I give my clients a nice comfy stance, and I have to hang in the harness, then I'm going to care more about padding and other features like gear loops and adjustable leg loops and stuff like that versus the weight. So that's where I wouldn't care about the weight too much. And I would just go for more of my comfort. Especially in the rock world, you don't tend to walk too much, but you do tend to sit in your harness a whole lot. So I know that this is going to be a lot of harnesses. I have 9 of them that I'm going to show you. I will admit that that is excessive. For many of you, you only need 1 or 2 harnesses. I do a lot of different types of climbing, and also I've been doing this for a really long time, so I've just accrued a number of things over the years. Either I get given stuff or it's a really good deal or I want to try something out. You don't have to bother writing a comment saying that this is way too many harnesses. No one ever needs that many, because I know that. This way it can give you kind of a full in-depth review. First couple of harnesses I want to start off with are the Petzl harnesses. I already made a whole video about this, so I'm just going to pull them up and show you what they are and what I use them for. This is the core selection of harnesses that I use. I size them at large. Most of the time when I put on these harnesses on my body, I have to adjust them completely tight because they are a size large. So like this one, for example, I'd pull about this tight for the buckle, and you'll see me having a big extra strap right here. I can easily fit in size mediums. But what I like about sizing my harnesses large is that it sets up the gear loops so that way they're on the peak of my hips. And these Petzl harnesses actually have a bit of a ramp in their gear loop, so gear will fly to the front there. But that's how I size my harnesses. And the idea with that is they're always as tight as they go when I'm just in a t-shirt, but I can put layers under them, which is really nice. I do enjoy having layers under my harness. I tend to wear layers more than anything else, especially with like my ice climbing or mountaineering harnesses. With the rock harnesses, sometimes it can get a little jangly, especially with the 2 rock harnesses I have for Petzl. They can get a little jangly if I have enough gear, and maybe I've been doing a ton of alpine climbing, and that is one of the reasons why I've kind of stopped using one of my extra harnesses for rock climbing or trad climbing, is because if I pull it all the way tight, it gets jangly on my hips. But the issue is if I use a medium harness, then going back to my example, it's kind of somewhere around here a lot of the times with medium harnesses. Now, if you're climbing in the gym or you don't have a bunch of gear, that doesn't really matter. But what happens is the gear loops get offset. So this way is further down on my right and this one's a bit higher on my left. And I kind of don't like that. I think it's really annoying. I do have one harness where no matter what size I am, it does fit perfectly centered. So that's often the harness I'll go to after I lose 5 pounds or whatever weight I tend to lose in the height of summer alpine guiding. The rest of the year, I fit these ones just fine. Also, different brands will have different sizing. So Petzl's Euro brand, so they're kind of sizing for the European body, whereas I have like a Misty mountain harness here that's sized for more of an American body. So Those are always great as if you find the brand that works well for your body. Okay, let's just get into the harnesses. First one that you've seen now is the Petzl Sama. This is a harness that I use for rock climbing, sport climbing, and oftentimes it is a good gym harness, but I use this outside a bunch too. So yeah, the things I like about this one are fixed leg loops, so I don't have to adjust those. I really like a nice fat belay loop in the rock world. It's just really nice and burly, and you can do all sorts of stuff with it. It has the speed closure, which is nice. I try not to buy too many double back harnesses nowadays. And then you have 4 pretty good sized gear loops and then a little twiddle loop if you want to hang your chalk bag on that. It doesn't pack down as small as some of the other harnesses, but packs down pretty good for a rock specific harness. Okay, looking at my computer, there is 445 grams for a size large. I'd say that that is a good mid-weight style harness, a little bit maybe on the heavier side. No ice clipper slots. That could kind of suck, but Petzl makes a really good ice clipper that can clip onto any sort of harness. Overall, a really good rock harness. Some people stay away from the more beginner-oriented stuff because it's like they don't want to look like a beginner, but I think that beginner stuff or the entry-level gear has its place and it's really nice. All right, next harness. This is another rock climbing harness, and this is where I have a bit of redundancy in my core system is having 2 rock climbing specific harnesses. But it is really nice to have one in your gym bag and then one in your outdoor bag. Or if you're doing like a lot of rock guiding and you want like 2 different setups, you can have a single pitch harness and a multi-pitch harness. And then there's other features on this harness that make it kind of nicer when you're doing long trad routes. The big reason for the long route is the gear loops. Look at this, 1, 2, 3, 4, a 5th one on the back, and then your little extra chalk bag loop. I really like this. You know, Black Diamond did this with their harnesses a while ago, and then they moved to just doing a little piece of string right here. But having this back 5th gear loop is really great because you can put your descending equipment on there, like your connect adjust, your hollow block, your double length sling. You know, only the stuff that I need for going down the route I can put on this, and then I can have these gear loops free for cams and quick draws and stuff. So this is a really great harness if you have a lot of gear. The belay loop is thin, and that's something, again, I kind of do like it, that wider gear loop style, but I'm okay with it on this one. Another thing is the leg loops have buckles, so if I want to put thicker pants or do some sort of micro adjustment, I can do that with this harness versus the other one. The waist belt, this goes for the Sama as well, but the waist belt is actually quite wide, which I think is really great because these harnesses are designed to be sat in for quite a while. And they have fairly thick leg loops, decent amount of padding. Packability. This one packs about the same as the Sama. So the weight is 435 grams for a size large. That is about 10 grams less than the Sama. So they managed to shave out a little bit of weight. They make up for the weight with the features. It's not exactly something that I'm going to climb like the West Ridge or Forbidden in, but if I'm just out for a day of rock work, this is a really great harness. All right, moving on to altitude harness. So this is made by Petzl, obviously, and features I just like the 2 gear loops. I like the lightweight, the packability. I like mountaineering harnesses with a belay loop because it gives you a bit more options. The buckle system isn't as much of my favorite. It's a simple buckle. You pass it through 2 and back through 1. But my other mountaineering harness I like that system a whole lot more. The buckles are kind of my biggest gripe because I've definitely had these things while they're clipped, and then I lean down on them just right, and then they pop out. So all of a sudden I don't have one of my leg loops buckled. Yeah, these buckles are really easy to pop off for whatever reason. But yeah, other than that, it's a good harness. This is like a medium large or a large extra large. Yeah, I'm not sure which one I have, medium large or large extra large. This is probably a medium large. If I was doing something like, not that I'm gonna climb Everest anytime soon, but if I were climbing Everest, I would bring this exact harness, and I would probably grab the large extra large So that way I can fit it really easily over my down suit and stuff like that. But as far as mountaineering where I mountaineer or going on Denali or anything, this harness is definitely wide enough to fit over all of the layers that I want to put it around. Medium large weighs in at 160 grams. So very lightweight harness, nice and packable. This one, the tangle factor does seem to pop up a lot. Like when I pull it out of my backpack, especially if I have stuff clipped to the gear loops here, it seems to get tangled really easily more than other harnesses. Just kind of weird, but good harness. All right, and the last one in my core set of harnesses is my Petzl Cero. I've wanted one of these for years, and this is the first year I finally got one. Really great harness, super lightweight for what it is. Has the full array, 4 gear loops, a little extra hollow loop, sit straps. The leg loops have no adjustment. A thin little belay loop, which is, I like that in the Alpine, because you're using your harness for different things. The adjustment right here is really smooth. One thing that's interesting is they added in this little sectional for gear loops. I don't really care about it. I don't know if other people hate it. The back gear loops are a little bit extra floppy, and I find that when I'm wearing a backpack, like an overnight pack with this harness, sometimes it can be hard to clip gear into the back gear loops. So that is something interesting, but I feel like that's more me than anything else. Waist loop is obviously more trimmed down, so this isn't the kind of harness that you would want to sit in for a while. It's more of a harness where you keep on moving. I like to think of this as kind of my North Ridge of Baker harness, or I've been using this on West Ridge of Forbidden. Just like technical mountaineering, it does have 2 ice clipper slots built in, so you can do technical alpine ice with it. And this wouldn't be a bad ice climbing harness, day in, day out ice harness at all. This thing packs down for sure quite a bit smaller than the other bigger harnesses I have. For a size large, it is 300 grams. So for the features that you get with this thing, so far you're not really doing too much better than that. There are definitely lighter weight harnesses on the market, but I really like the versatility and the feeling of this harness, so that's kind of the big deal. So that was the core set of harnesses. When I'm up here in Washington, I only really need 3 of those to get through the whole season. When I move down to California in a little bit, that's all the harnesses I really need for Cali. But if I want to sort of increase the setup or getting to more specialized areas like big walling or comfort, then I can move into some of these other harnesses. Another thing is these were harnesses that I owned before I got that core Petzl set. So a number of these have turned into more backup harnesses also. If one of those gets messed up, I can grab one of these. But a lot of these are older than that pile I just showed you. First setup, the Singing Rock Flake harness. So this is obviously another mountaineering harness. It is bigger and more burly than the Altitude. You can see it right there. The gear loops are a little bit more, or just bigger and a bit more robust. There are no ice clipper slots on this harness too. That's fine. I don't personally like having ice clipper slots on my mountaineering harnesses. And then the fabric is more burly for sure. So this harness is overall more burly. It still does have that belay loop that I want my mountaineering harnesses to come with though. So here they are, kind of side-by-side comparison. It probably is hard to tell with the camera, but this definitely packs down a little bit smaller than this one. So I really do like it. I'm keeping it around as mostly a backup, but I still think it kind of has a place where if I was doing a mountaineering course or a large expedition, I may take this harness instead of the Petzl one because it is a bit more burly. If I'm worried about like sitting back in the harness at all, or actually like sitting in it for an amount of time, this is for sure more comfortable than my Petzl one. So I may try to play that game, or I may just live with the Petzl one. Another thing I really like about this harness is the buckle. This is where it really wins. It still has 2-buckle system. You can take a bite of the sling here and you can pass it through that first buckle. And then you see how this is like a G hook? You just slot the fabric through the G hook and then you're in. So that's that. And you would have the belay loop through it. So that is one thing that I really like about this, the hooking system right there, the buckles are more robust too. So these have never come unclipped on my legs before while doing anything. And I've used this harness quite a bit actually. This is my main mountaineering harness for quite some time and before I got the altitude. So I still think it has a place in the quiver. I still really like the harness, and I don't want to get rid of it. It's just, it is just a little bit heavier and more bulky. So if I'm doing something like ski mountaineering, I'll definitely bring the altitude. If I'm spending more time in the harness, or I want a bit more real estate with my belay loops, or I feel if I'm going to be hanging in it or spending a lot of time in the harness, I may go with this. But at the moment, it's more or less just a backup to my mountaineering harness. Okay, this one's kind of an interesting one. This is the Cero by Edelrid. So this one is also weird because it's the only harness where the buckle is on the right instead of the left. It has 4 gear loops on it. The gear loops are quite small compared to any of these other harnesses. And then, yeah, you can see how it has 2 ice clipper slots. And I guess the last time I used this was for ice climbing since I still have these things on here. The belay loop is your standard thin belay loop, and then you have adjustable legs. So this one was kind of an experiment. It doesn't really have a place in the quiver so much. I guess it's rigged to go for ice climbing, so if I went ice climbing, maybe I would grab this harness because I have the clips. One thing I do notice is this is a size large, and if I pull, I have definitely adjusted this thing all the way tight and still have had the harness slipping off of my hips or being a bit more rattly. I am officially in between Edelrid sizes when it comes to harnesses. That one's a little annoying. So I gotta at least wear a jacket or two if I'm gonna use this harness, but that kind of makes it a nice cold weather rock climbing one. It doesn't really have a place in the quiver. It's just kind of an extra one that I've wound up with, but it feels good. It's nice for sitting. You can have a decent amount of gear on here, not too much, but a decent amount. And yeah, winter mountaineering on a technical climb, you could totally go for it. Pack down deal, packs down about as small as all the other harnesses, and it weighs in at 315 grams. So it's about the same as the Aquila or the Sama. Ooh, this video is getting long. All right, so here's backup harness, Black Diamond Vision. This is not exactly the harness that I really use anymore. It's just a backup, I guess, to something like the Cita. It did have the place of the Cita. 4 gear loops, 2 ice clipper slots. The gear loops are quite flimsy. If you put any sort of gear on here, it bows, which is fine, they still work. Leg loops are non-adjustable, and you have this tiny little belay loop. So for a while, or actually a long time, this was my go-to harness for North Ridge of Baker or West Ridge of Forbidden, which it got replaced this year with the Cita. So I'm just holding on to this as a backup harness, but it's still pretty good shape and it works pretty well. It is not comfortable at all. I've done hanging belays here. Like this was not built for comfort in the slightest. So if you're a sport climber, you may like it. Another thing is it is a size medium. Most of the time I adjust it where the gear loops work for me. But if I have to space this out, like wearing a couple extra jackets at all, then those left gear loops start running away from me around my back. I would rather have this in a size large. Okay, moving on to Big Wall harness. This is the Black Diamond Big Gun. I just went onto their website to find the weight for this. Turns out they have changed it now to the long haul harness. And so this is outdated for sure. Typical Big Wall features, huge amount of padding here, huge amount of padding there. This one's interesting in how it has a single buckle or double back design, which they got rid of in the long haul. Just looked it up, thank God, because no one knows double backs anymore. Standard Big Wall harness has 6 gear loops. You can see 6, 6, and 7 right there, and a haul loop. So you can fit a ton of stuff. I've climbed a number of walls with this, and the padding has always been nice. One thing I really like for Big Wall harnesses too is double gear or belay loops for either daisy chain. And yeah, overall a really solid harness. Again, my issue is this is in size medium, And sometimes those left gear loops run away from me. But another problem is the adjustment, right? So for those of us who remember double black harnesses, this used to be the norm. And one thing that was always fun with these is that you can never quite get them adjusted fully tight. So I found that when I would put a big wall rack on this harness, which is quite a bit of weight, I would always be tightening up this strap in the front here. I'd always just slowly tighten it closer and closer together. And I'd never quite feel like the harness is fully on versus those speed buckles where you just rip them back. So this harness is probably finding its way out of my quiver, and I don't know what I'm going to replace it with yet, but it will be another big wall harness coming up. Final harness in my quiver. Whew, here we are. So this one I bought from a buddy of mine. It was completely new, really good deal. This is the Misty Mountain Cadillac harness. And features here, you have the 6 gear loops. You can see for some reason these things go up. Once you clip gear to them, they fold down, but 6 gear loops right here and a haul loop. And then the front, you have a nice fat belay loop, a double buckle system right here, and then you have adjustable leg loops. So this harness is pretty nice, actually. It's very specific. This one is the only harness that fits my waist after I've been alpine guiding for a few months and lost the extra little bit of weight I have. So that's been great. And then another thing is it's still fairly low profile. It's not as bulky as the Black Diamond or the Big Wall harness, but it's still more than all the other harnesses. So this has become my current go-to multi-pitch rock guiding harness. Because again, we're sitting in that harness a whole lot. We have weight, we're belaying people, we're putting our clients in the nicer spots. That generally means I'm sitting on the anchor and hanging out in space. So by having a more padded harness, I'm a bit more happy at the end of the day. This harness weighs a lot, actually. 547 grams. So that's easily the heaviest of all the harnesses here. It also doesn't pack down small at all. But the point of this harness is it's basically a big wall harness. I would totally take this up a big wall. It's just all about the comfort and ease of use. In my daily rock guiding, I don't really need 6 gear loops, but it is kind of cool to have one. I can clip something down here on these lower ones if I want to keep it out of my way. One thing that's interesting is this is a size medium, has a little M right there, and this thing fits a huge range. I'm like right at the end of it, so that's your American sizing for you. All right, I mean, that's everything. All 9 of the harnesses I have in my quiver. Again, some of them are out of date or antiquated. Some of them are older and now are backup harnesses. And for most of my stuff, I'm going to use those 4 Petzl harnesses. But that gives you an idea of my evolution getting to that point, and then all the different harnesses I have at my disposal that I can use for different things. And hopefully that helps you with sort of deciding what you want to do and giving you some examples of harnesses that'll do that. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in my next video. Come on. Toad. Yeah, it's just like these big guys are just out, I guess, with all the...
It's mushroom season.
The wetness.
Yeah.
It's a big